Call of Duty Black Ops 3 had a pretty rough launch window, and after the rough launch, hype for the game died down a ton. Shadows of Evil and just the state that the game was in at the time of launch alienated much of the fan base. To be blunt, the game needed a miracle, and a miracle is exactly what happened. Eisendrache is not only the most widely acclaimed map to come out of Black Ops 3 Zombies, it's also widely considered to be one of the best, if not the best Zombies map ever made. At the very least, it's pretty universally considered a top 3 Zombies map. So what changed? What was so different about Eisendrache that it became an immediate fan favorite? That's what I want to figure out today. Welcome to part 3 of the Black Ops 3 Zombies 10-year anniversary retrospective. This time we're going to be looking at DLC 1, Eisendrache. The gameplay of Eisendrache is kind of weird because it's not really more or less complex than Shadows of Evil, but what parts of the map are complex or simple have been switched around. I feel like this sounds really confusing, but let me explain. The basic setup process of Eisendrache is incredibly simple, probably being the easiest setup out of any map in Black Ops 3 other than like the Giant and the Chronicles maps, of course. Getting the power on is as simple as it gets, just open up doors until you reach the power room. You can take the left path, which takes you through the mine tunnel, the courtyard, the church, and then to the armor hallway and to the power room. Or there's the right path, which takes you through the main gate, another courtyard, the living quarters, and then the armor hall / power switch room again. But like 90% of Zombies maps, pretty much everyone always just takes the right path. Pack-a-Punch is super easy to get too. The machine moves on Eisendrache between 3 different locations, which are pretty much on the 3 different levels of the map. At the top level of the map, there's one right outside the power room next to the death ray trap. The second is at the bottom of the castle, which is under the church and the main courtyard. You can only get to the Undercroft after turning on the power switch, as the 3 doors leading to the area are all closed when the game starts and will open once power is turned on. The last Pack-a-Punch location is at the rocket launch pad, way at the bottom of the map and completely separate from the main castle. You get to the launch pad via a teleporter inside of a lab that can be accessed through the Undercroft, so you need to get power on to get to the launch pad too. When the game starts, the 3 different Pack-a-Punch locations will all just have chunks of the machine. You can interact with the platforms to teleport these pieces to the other platforms. Interact with 2 of the platforms and the machine will be completed at the 3rd and final platform. After this, the Pack-a-Punch machine will begin to periodically teleport between the 3 locations. And there are plaques next to each location that will light up to show you where the machine is currently located. And while I'm on the topic of Pack-a-Punch, Eisendrache is also the first Zombies map to have multiple versions of its Pack-a-Punch camo. And I think that this is pretty cool, considering that pretty much every single Zombies map following Eisendrache would also have multiple versions of its Pack-a-Punch camo. The Eisendrache Pack-a-Punch camos are gem-themed. They're supposed to look like gemstones, and there are 5 variations of the camo: Topaz, Amethyst, Garnet, Sapphire, and Emerald, and they come in yellow, purple, red, blue, and green respectively. Again, this isn't like a crazy change to the mode, but it is interesting how pretty much every single map that followed Eisendrache would also follow in this pattern of having multiple color patterns for its Pack-a-Punch camo. And I think it is just, without a doubt, a very nice addition to the game mode. It gives all your Pack-a-Punch guns a bit more variety from one another. Perks-wise, Eisendrache sets the standard that the rest of Black Ops 3 will follow. 9 perks consisting of Juggernog, Quick Revive, Speed Cola, Double Tap, Stamina Up, Deadshot, Mule Kick, Electric Cherry, and Widow's Wine. A really solid set of perks, don't get me wrong, but sadly this means that Eisendrache doesn't introduce any new perks, and neither will any of the future maps for Black Ops 3. The perks are also in static locations every game, unlike Shadows of Evil and the Giant, which leads to some more deliberate map design. Like how Juggernog can be seen inside the Undercroft dungeon through a door right on the other side of the spawn room. This door, however, is locked shut until the power is turned on, meaning that map design-wise, Juggernog is the furthest point in the main castle from the spawn room until you get power on. So you really need to work to get Juggernog. Other maps do this too, like Keynote or Toten. It's just really good game design. But that's not to say that Eisendrache doesn't introduce anything new. For starters, there's the Wonder Spheres, the map's new mode of transport. There are 4 of these on the map, and they basically have 2 routes that they cover. From one side of the castle to the other, and from the castle to the rocket launch site and back. The spheres cost 500 points, but to use them you need to turn on the receiving pad for a given sphere, and there are 4 of these as well. And this is just so that you can't take a sphere to an area that you haven't opened up yet. Save for Easter egg stuff, I don't really use the Wonder Spheres in the courtyards too much, but the spheres for getting to and from the launch site are super useful, as they save you a ton of time by not needing to run down to the teleporter in the Undercroft whenever you need to get to the rocket launch. And speaking of the Undercroft, this area contains a pyramid, which is a huge focal point of the map's main quest. Around the pyramid are 4 pressure plates on the ground. Stand still on one for a couple seconds and it'll sink down and start glowing blue. Do this at all 4 plates and the Undercroft will enter a state of low gravity, which is awesome. This is such a unique feature that makes this area of the map so dynamic to play in, since you get to wall run and jump right over any zombies that are in there. It really feels like at this point in the game, Treyarch still wanted to include as much of the Black Ops 3 movement into zombies as possible, since Shadows of Evil had the wall running section too, which didn't really make a ton of sense when you think about it, how the Shadows of Evil characters just ran across this wall, but whatever. The low gravity isn't permanent, but after you start the first low gravity sequence, for the rest of the game, the Undercroft will alternate between a state of normal gravity and low gravity pretty frequently, meaning that you won't have to wait long until you can fly around again. Just make sure you aren't hovering over any zombies when the low gravity ends, as that's a really easy way to get yourself killed. But the biggest new additions of the map introduced are the Wrath of the Ancients and the 4 Keeper Bows, which are the map's 5 wonder weapons. The Wrath of the Ancients is the base bow, and you get it by feeding the 3 dragon soul boxes around the map. One is in the lower courtyard next to the living quarters, another is inside of the church, and the last is in the Undercroft. Once the 3 dragons are fed, go to the crypt that's like on the stairs between the church and the Undercroft, and behind the sarcophagus you can pick up the Wrath of the Ancients. This is pretty much identical to getting like the Hell's Retriever on Mob of the Dead or Blood of the Dead. You just feed 3 things, and then get your wonder weapon. The Wrath of the Ancients is pretty mediocre as far as wonder weapons go. It's basically just a reskin of the Sparrow for multiplayer, since it shoots explosive arrows. The arrows can be spammed, or you can charge up an arrow for more damage at the cost of it consuming an extra shot from your ammo supply. The worst thing about it is that it just falls off really quickly. By round 15 or so it starts to fall off, and if you're still using it by round 20, then you're just doing something wrong. The cool thing about the Wrath of the Ancients is, of course, that you can upgrade it into one of the 4 Keeper Bows, each having a completely different aesthetic and ability. The Eisendrache bows were only the second set of 4 elemental wonder weapons that we saw in Zombies. Nowadays, it feels like every 3rd or 4th Zombies map has 4 wonder weapons, 1 for each player, but back when the Eisendrache launched, it was still a very novel thing in Zombies. The only map prior to also have 4 elemental wonder weapons was Origins, the map that debuted the concept. And this isn't the only connection to Origins that the Eisendrache has, but we'll get back to that later. The 4 upgraded bows are the Krima La Amaham, the Krima Ho Nol Amho Gabrak, the Krigagalit Lu Gostaham, and the Kriholo Lu Krima Salit. But those names are just a mouthful, so everyone just calls them the Storm Bow, the Magma Bow, the Void Bow, and the Wolf Bow respectively. To upgrade the Wrath of the Ancients into any of the 4 Keeper Bows, they need to do a quest, and I'll give you a super brief rundown of each of them now. The Storm Bow. Shoot the Weather Vane next to the Death Ray to get the Broken Arrow. Light the bonfires outside of the map. While the Undercroft is in low gravity, run along the wall and run over the 5 stones with a lightning bolt etched into them. Fill up the 3 urns with zombie souls to charge them with lightning, and then use the lightning to make your arrow electrified. Then shoot the bonfires again with the electric arrows. Then go back to the Weather Vane and place down the broken arrow to repair it. Put the arrow on the lightning podium in the Undercroft and then fill it with souls. Then you can get the Storm Bow. The Magma Bow. Shoot the red symbol in the clock tower to pick up the broken arrow. Immediately following a rocket test, shoot the rock to the right of the blast doors while it's still glowing hot from the test, and this will send a mini sun up to the castle. Shoot the 3 rings while flying with the Wonder Spheres. Then stand inside the rings and kill zombies to fill them like soul boxes. Figure out which fireplace you need to light, then light it. Place your broken arrow into the fireplace to repair it, then go kill zombies in the Undercroft near the Magma Bow podium. The Void Bow. Shoot the purple symbol in the main gatehouse next to Double Tap. Then melee kill a zombie over a glowing purple stone in the trophy room to reveal the cursed urn with a demon inside. Go collect the 6 Keeper Skulls from around the map, and then lead 6 crawlers into the ritual circle around the urn to feed the skulls. Then the urn will say 3 words correlating to 3 of the 6 suits of armor in the armor hallway near the power room. If you interact with the suit of armor, you will see a Keeper symbol. So you need to translate the 3 words into 3 Keeper symbols. Now zombies will start dropping Keeper symbols, with there being 6 in total. You need to kill zombies until you get at least the 3 symbols that you need. Once you get the symbols, go to the urn room and shoot the symbols on the floor. This is the demon in the urn's name. If you get his name correct, he'll fix the arrow for you, and then you can go fill up the soul box in the Undercroft. And lastly, the Wolf Bow. Interact with the 4 paintings around the castle in the correct order to tell the story of the Wolf King. Then go into the Undercroft and collect the arrow from behind the wolf symbol. Shoot the red flag at the launch platform and pick up the wolf skull that falls down. Put the skull in the Undercroft and follow the wolf ghost around the map and feed him zombie souls whenever he stops to dig, picking up the bones he digs up along the way. In the Undercroft, shoot the stone with the 2 wolf heads to make a platform. Then in zero gravity, land on the platform and interact with the coffin to make the Wolf King's skeleton. It will give you the fixed arrow. You know the drill by now, fill the soul box to get the completed bow. The bows are awesome. Not only do they look great, they all have very different abilities. You can spam the uncharged arrows, which are basically the same for each bow, but they do have some differences. The wolf bow slows down zombies, the void bow spawns a single keeper skull, the storm bow leaves a small ball of lightning that shocks zombies, and the magma bow spawns in some lava to kill zombies. The special abilities come in the form of the charged shots, which are really where the bows shine. The wolf bow is the simplest, acting a lot like a thunder gun. The charged shot will spawn in a wolf ghost that runs through zombies, killing them and slowing down any that survive. It's very easy to use, but also doesn't have much of a skill ceiling other than just spamming the charged shot, which honestly can kind of be said for most of the bows. The Magma Bow's charged shot traps any zombies in its area of effect inside of rocks that act like mini volcanoes. After a few seconds, the volcanoes erupt and kill the zombies, as well as any zombies that aren't trapped if they're close enough to the eruption. Plus, as a bonus, the Magma Bow will give you 60 points per zombie killed with the charged shot, as opposed to 50 like the other 3 bows give you, so this is the rich man's bow. The Void Bow is my personal favorite of the 4. The charged shot will spawn a portal, and Ghost Keeper skulls will start to come out of the portal and will start eating zombies. You can have up to 3 of the portals at once, so it's a very good set it and forget it bow. Plus, I think it's also just the coolest looking bow, and the most unique of the 4, abilities wise. And lastly is the Storm Bow, which is the fan favorite. The charged shot makes a lightning tornado that sucks in and kills zombies. Aside from the Wolf Bow, this is easily the easiest to use, and one of the easiest to build as well. In my experience, whenever me and my friends are teaching somebody new how to play Eisendrache, this is the first bow we teach them to build. It's pretty foolproof. The bows are great, and aside from the staffs from Origins, they're the most iconic set of 4 Zombies Wonder Weapons, and I think it's definitely warranted. Not only are they one of the earliest examples of this type of Wonder Weapon, but they're also one of the most unique. Sure, you can reduce them down to charge arrow and kill zombies, but they have a lot of style in how they kill zombies. That's honestly why I like the Void Bow the most. I think objectively it's one of the worst bows, at least that's what I've been led to believe by the community over the years, but it just looks and sounds so cool. I mentioned just a bit ago that Der Eisendrache has a lot in common with Origins, and that's because Der Eisendrache is basically Origins 2.0. It takes the experimental and new, at the time at least, aspects of Origins and streamlines them to make a more accessible and less complicated map. It pretty much sands down all the edges that Origins had, for better or for worse. Take the bows, for instance. They're a set of 4 upgradable wonder weapons like the staves, but Der Eisendrache does away with the first half of the process, making the bows a lot easier to build. Since all of them are just upgrades of the Wrath of the Ancients, you don't need to learn 8 quests like you did in Origins to get the base staffs and then the upgrades. You only need to learn 5 quests. The same goes for the actual setting up process too. Those 6 generators that you need to occasionally defend throughout the game was one of the most polarizing aspects of Origins, so Der Eisendrache just goes back to the simple power switch. The Wonder Fizz is back on Der Eisendrache too. Since Cold War, this has been in pretty much every single map, and it even shows up on every map going forward in Black Ops 3, but this was the first time it was seen since Origins, only furthering Der Eisendrache's connection to Origins. And the Panzer Soldat returns too, alongside Hellhounds as the map's special enemies. The Panzer's claw attack on Origins was annoying sometimes, so they replaced it with the shock charge launcher instead to stun players. The charges can also electrify other zombies if they explode near one. Aside from that, the flamethrower attack is intact, and the Panzer behaves pretty much exactly like it did on Origins, spawning in every 5 rounds or so. The best thing to use against him are the 4 upgraded bows, as each of the charge attacks will stun the Panzer for a short window, making him very easy to kill. Hellhounds are the exact same as they've always been. They spawn in on their own round, and you get a max ammo when you kill the last one. Very standard stuff. And this might be a bit of a stretch, but dig sites also kind of make a comeback through the tram system, although it works very differently. Zombies will occasionally drop tram fuses, you'll get one for free at the beginning of the game as well. Place your fuse into the console in the spawn room, and it'll call up a gondola from the tram station down to the bottom of the mountain, and you'll get a free power-up. It's usually something small like an insta-kill or double points, but sometimes it can be bonus points, or max ammo, or a fire sale. Again, nothing like game-changing, but they're really nice rewards to get during your setup process. The rocket shield returns from Shadows of Evil with a silver, bloody reskin to fit the colder vibe of 3’s. The thrusters can be found in the lower courtyard, the main body of the shield can be found in the upper courtyard, and the window can be found in the undercroft, but only while wall running during low gravity, since it's up on the wall of the undercroft. There are also 3 workbenches, one in the undercroft, one in the church, and one above Double Tap in the little gatehouse. Normally, me and my buddies always build the shield in either the church or the undercroft. Aside from the shield, there's also the map's specialist weapon, the Ragnarok DG4s. I know I included the specialist weapons in the Easter egg sections of the last 2 maps, and that's probably what I'm going to do for the rest of the maps for Black Ops 3, but the Ragnaroks are comparatively so simple to get compared to all the other specialist weapons that I think I might as well just include them here. The Ragnaroks are buildable, and the 3 pieces are all obtained in different ways, kind of like the Fire Staff on Origins. Just like the Fire Staff, the first piece is dropped when you kill the first Panzer of the game. The second part spawns in after you use the Death Ray for the first time, and it'll be floating in the air. You need to use one of the Wonder Spheres in either courtyard to grab the Ragnarok part while you fly through the air. And lastly, the third part is found at the rocket site. Right before a launch, a lever at the bottom of the stairs behind the rocket will become flippable. Flip the lever and then rush into the tunnel before the blast goes off and kills you. Then wait until the 3 buttons on the panel next to the teleporter are green, then press the button and the part will teleport into the teleporter. And the Ragnaroks are pretty much just the gravity spikes for multiplayer, but electricity themed. You can do the jumping slam attack with them, or you can plant them into the ground, and this will kill any zombies and trap any panzers that enter the Ragnarok's lightning for the duration of the specialist weapon. The Ragnaroks are really good, but sadly, much like all the other specialists, I usually just end up forgetting that I have them unless I'm doing the Easter egg. But that's just the me problem. Objectively, the Ragnaroks are an incredibly powerful specialist weapon, and are the most enduring out of all of Black Ops 3 specialist weapons. Not only do they appear again later in Black Ops 3's DLC cycle, but they also reappear in Black Ops 4 as an upgraded version of themselves called the Ragnarok DG5s. But gameplay-wise, they're pretty much the same, and it all got started here under Eisendrache. And lastly, there are the traps on the map, of which there are a pretty good handful. There's the electric trap in the doorway to the church, which is an absolute classic. Then there's the castle gate trap at, well, the castle's gate, which makes the gate slam up and down super quickly to kill zombies. It's very fitting for the castle theming of the map, but I don't ever really find myself using it. That whole right part of the map is just a little out of the way for me once it gets set up. I usually just always hang out on the left side over by the church or in the undercroft. This is a little addendum I'm recording well after the rest of the voiceover. It's currently January 15th, so a couple weeks before the video goes up, because I just learned an interesting fact about the gatehouse trap under Eisendrache, and that is that it is fundamentally broken. It does the opposite of what it should do. For those who don't know, which apparently I assume I must be one of the other people who didn't know, because it seems like it's pretty common knowledge, but the gate trap does not kill zombies. It basically despawns and then multiplies them, because for every zombie that gets killed by the trap, 4 to 5 more will spawn in its place. This means that by using the gatehouse trap, you can effectively keep the game stuck at whatever round you want forever. And this is pretty big because obviously it means that, theoretically speaking, you could keep the game stuck at round 1 for as long as you want. Which honestly might be pretty useful. I might actually end up using this trick for getting some just footage of the map for my atmosphere section of the video. Just a very weird tidbit that I felt like I have to include in the video, so I'm just recording this after the fact to add it in there. And lastly is the Death Ray on the castle's bastion. Once turned on, this electrifies the whole of the bastion area save for the little lower section where the Wonder Sphere is. Any zombies that walk through the Death Ray will be electrocuted and disintegrated. The most helpful thing that the Death Ray does is that if a Panzer walks into it, they will be trapped in place and damaged by the Death Ray, making them a very easy target. This means that the Death Ray is super helpful early game if you don't have an upgraded bow yet. On top of this, the Death Ray is a vital part of the map's main quest, so for me at least, it's the most memorable of the traps by far. And that's pretty much the main gameplay of 3’s. I said in my Shadows video I wouldn't spend as long talking about the gameplay of each map, and I kept my word, thankfully. But truth be told, there isn't as much to say about 3’s. Fundamentally, it's a much more old school styled map. It's a lot less spread out than Shadows of Evil is, and there are a lot more shortcuts and throughways that let you traverse the map more quickly, like the little tunnels from the Undercroft or the well that you can stand in to get shot up into the courtyard. It's also just a much easier map than Shadows. The Apothicon Servant is great and all, but I think the bows outclass it any day of the week. Firstly, because the bows just have so much more ammo. 75 shots. Even if you're only using charge shots, that's still 37 shots, over 25 more than the Servant has. Plus, everyone in your game can have a bow instead of just there being one Apothicon Servant. And I'd say the bows are a lot easier to get. You know, at the very least they're much quicker to get since there's basically no RNG involved in making them save for getting like the symbols with the void bow. The Panzers are also so much easier than the Margwas are as boss zombies since you don't need to wait for any weak spots to open with the Panzers. You can just mag dump them as soon as they appear. Basically, 3’s is exactly what Black Ops 3 needed after Shadows of Evil, which is very coincidental since I don't know where I heard it, but I'm pretty sure DLCs 1 and 2 were already finished by the time Black Ops 3 launched. Just so happened to work out perfectly in the game's favor. People didn't like the complex and sprawling nature of Shadows of Evil, and Eisendrache is just a much more reined in and easy to grasp map compared to Shadows. The game was also just in a much better state by the time DLC 1 dropped. Most of the weird game quirks that were in the game at launch that I talked about in the Shadows video were fixed by the time of Eisendrache. I imagine there were a lot of people who had dropped off the game during the launch window and then returned when Eisendrache launched, only to find the game was in a much better place. Honestly, I think this is one of the main reasons why there seems to be a ton of revisionism online regarding Black Ops 3's launch period. I think people who didn't like the game at launch but came back later once it was fixed just kind of forgot about all the problems it had. But, you know, call me Matt Pat, because that's just a theory. A zombies theory. On top of this, Eisendrache is also just a really fun zombies map, so it's no surprise that it was the kick in the ass that Black Ops 3 really needed. It completely rejuvenated the community and just the hype for Black Ops 3. I really don't have much else to say. It's considered a top-tier zombies map for a very good reason. Eisendrache didn't only rejuvenate Black Ops 3 due to its gameplay, but it's also where the game's story really kicked into high gear and hooked players. So let's see if the story still holds up as well after 10 years. The story of Eisendrache picks up very soon after The Giant, with the Primus crew using a giant robot that they stole from the 3’s facility to chase a Group 935 truck that contains Ultimus Dempsey, who's being kept in cryostasis inside of like a cryopod. The robot gets destroyed by a rocket and Primus continues on foot. They take a gondola up to the Eagle's Nest, which is a Group 935 base at Griffin Castle. By the time they get to the castle, Dempsey's already been loaded into a rocket and is being sent to the moon. This leaves Primus needing to figure out how they can get Dempsey back to Earth so that they can capture his soul. The main new-ish character on Eisendrache is Dr. Groff, who is the map's main antagonist. He first showed up on Moon back in Black Ops 1, but he gets much more focus here, since he and Richthofen are constantly talking throughout the whole map's quest and just while you play the map. He's kind of like an unseen threat, since for the whole game he's on the moon at Griffin Station. And I say unseen, but you do end up seeing him very briefly during an Easter egg step, but I'll get to that later when I talk about the Easter egg. Once Dr. Groff realizes that Primus Richthofen is not the Richthofen who he knows, again, he assumes that this is the Ultimus Richthofen who got killed at the Giant, Dr. Groff starts to try to stop you at every step of the main quest. As far as one-off zombies antagonists go, Dr. Groff is definitely one of the better ones in my opinion. But not that there are too many of those in zombies, like one of the only other ones that really comes to mind for me is like Dr. Modi from Terminus in like Black Ops 6, and honestly who remembers her at this point? Groff is a very hateable character, but in a good way, and he gets fleshed out a good bit through the map's 5 radios, all of which are about him. They do a good job of showing us his perspective on the events that have occurred thus far, at least in the Deceptio fracture where Eisendrache takes place along with the Giant. We learn that he wasn't at 3’s when that facility fell, and he assumed, correctly, that Ultimus Richthofen is dead, so he went to the moon and took control of Group 935. And I think it's especially cool since when he's up on the moon, he kind of turns into Ultimus Richthofen, because he starts to go crazy because of the influence of the MPD. He even starts to see Samantha Maxis around Griffin Station, which just drives him even further into insanity. And then there's an audio log that's pretty self-contained, but hints towards future maps, and it talks about Division 9 and their specimens, although it doesn't specify what those specimens are, and how they could help to break the stalemate on the Eastern Front. And obviously that all would get more of development in Zetsubo no Shima and Gorod Krovi. But back to Eisendrache. Primus ends up getting the rocket to redirect to Earth, crashing into the upper courtyard and dropping Dempsey's cryopod in front of the church. This makes Dr. Groff activate a failsafe that electrifies the pod, preventing Primus from interacting with it. So they proceed to grab the stiff goldenrod and they place it inside of the sarcophagus, which summons a Keeper Ghost. Primus follows the Keeper Ghost around the castle, and with the power of the 4 bows, fill him with souls and he obtains a physical form. Primus uses the power of the Keeper to bring the MPD from the moon to Griffin Castle, replacing the pyramid in the Undercroft. However, the power of the MPD in the Dark Ether corrupts the Keeper, who Primus end up facing off against and end up killing. Once the corrupted Keeper's dead, Primus sends a salvo of missiles towards the moon, destroying it and killing Dr. Groff and the rest of the Group 935 remnants who were hiding out at Griffin Station. After this, as Primus goes to kill Dempsey, Richtofen finally reveals his plan to the rest of Primus, to kill off their original Ultimus selves and seal their souls into the summoning key in order to ensure a better tomorrow. After some brief arguing with Richtofen, Dempsey agrees with the plan and says that he'll be the one to kill his older self. Dempsey turns off the life support on the cryopod and Richtofen absorbs Ultimus Dempsey's soul, accomplishing Primus's goal at Griffin Castle. I'm condensing quite a bit since there is a lot of busy work in the Easter egg that I didn't mention here since it really isn't all that important story-wise, but that is the broad strokes of the Eisendrache story. And it's a lot, I can't think of a nice way to put this, it's a lot better than the Giant story. The Giant story was really, really weak. The story of Eisendrache feels like it has an actual point to develop Primus Dempsey. Each DLC map in Black Ops 3 focuses on one of the main characters of Primus, and this is Dempsey's map. And that ending, man, with Dempsey shutting off his own life support.
Good to see you, Tank.
This really set a new standard for the level of storytelling and writing and just character that zombies could achieve, and it really did blow everyone away back when Eisendrache first dropped. Do I think it's still the mode's best cutscene, like to this day? No, I think that honor goes to Blood of the Dead's ending, since that one actually makes me tear up a bit whenever I watch it. But Eisendrache's ending is still phenomenal. One thing I noticed though with the ending is that when Richtofen tells the rest of Primus what the summoning key does and how he'll use it to seal away and preserve Dempsey's soul, he says that it's what the rest of them saw him do to his other self at the Giant. But as the Zombies comics revealed, he didn't get his soul from himself at the Giant. So there's a bit of a contradiction there. Boy, I sure hope someone got fired for that one. And Eisendrache kind of acts as like an alternate version of Moon from Black Ops 1, since it hits a lot of similar plot beats. There's obviously the big one, and how it flips the script on the ending of Moon and has the moon being blown up instead of the Earth being blown up. But there's a lot of other connections here too, like the reintroduction of Dr. Groff, whose only prior appearance was in some of the radios on Black Ops 1 Moon. I mean, even the dialogue that plays between Richtofen and Groff at the beginning of each match is almost line for line the same as one of the radios on Moon.
Eagle's Nest, this is Griffin Station. We have an update. Over.
Eagle's Nest, this is Griffin Station. We have an update. Over.
Dr. Groff, have you made any progress?
Dr. Grove, have you made any progress?
Yes, Doctor. The machine is ready and awaiting the conduit.
Yeah, Doctor. The machine is ready and awaiting the conduit.
Very good. I will proceed with Operation Shield and join you shortly.
Very good. I will proceed with Operation Shield and join you shortly.
Then there's the MPD and its pivotal role in the story and the quest, and then there's also just the stiff golden rod. And that's kind of my only real question regarding the plot of the Eisendrache. Where did the goldenrod come from? Was it on the rocket with Dempsey? Was it in the crate that his cryopod crashes into? You know, who knows? I'm pretty sure it was just on the rocket though, but I'm not 100% sure. I mean, is it convenient that it lands in the snow for Primus to pick up? Absolutely, but it really isn't anywhere near as important of an item as it was back in Black Ops 1. It really feels like it's more here just to act as another connection to Moon than anything else, and honestly, I think it works as that. I think one of the other reasons why Eisendrache was such a breath of fresh air for the community when it launched is just that everything with the Apothicons and the Keepers, you know, all the Lovecraftian aspects of the story, take a back seat here. All that stuff's obviously still here through things like the bows and especially the Void Bow. Then there's the story of the Wolf King and how one of the paintings literally shows an Apothicon invasion going on. And then there's also, you know, the Keeper who ends up being the final boss of the main quest. But for the most part, it follows a very classic formula for a zombies map. The blank crew go to blank to retrieve blank. In this case, the Primus crew goes to Griffin Castle to retrieve Dempsey's soul. Seriously, this is like the formula that applies to like 90% of zombies maps. It's not even funny. But Eisendrache is just a lot more small scale and character focused as opposed to something like Shadows of Evil. I feel like it's funny calling Eisendrache small scale when, they blow up the moon, but it's true. Especially when compared to Shadows of Evil, which had that crew facing the imminent destruction of their dimension. In Eisendrache, the biggest threat is like, what? Dr. Groff? Some old guy on the moon? I mean, honestly, if we're talking about the biggest threat, size-wise, it's the Keeper, but it's just a nice break from all the Lovecraftian stuff, especially for the people in the fanbase who aren't very fond of all the Keeper and the Apothicon lore. If 2 maps in Black Ops 3 that heavily focus on that stuff, Shadows of Evil and then Revelations, is already too much for a lot of people, imagine if the whole game was dedicated to it, fully. I think it's very thematically relevant that Group 935 gets effectively destroyed in Eisendrache, because obviously in other fractures and other dimensions they still exist and they're still operating in different capacities, like especially Gorod Krovi, they are very much at large there. But the fact that you pretty much destroy them in grand fashion on Eisendrache, again, I don't think it's unintentional at all. It's a kind of passing of the torch moment. Because from this point forward, they're really no longer the main bad guys of Call of Duty Zombies. I mean, they really hadn't been since, Black Ops 1 World at War anyways. Black Ops 2, you had Broken Arrow, and then obviously Mob of the Dead and Origins were kind of their own thing. Origins had Group 935, but they haven't really been the main focus in a while, and this feels like a final kind of send-off to them. Especially since, for the rest of Black Ops 3, and even for most of Black Ops 4, the new main antagonistic threat is the Shadow Man and the Apothicons. They're what gets a lot of the focus going forward. So I feel like this is a very intentional send-off to Group 935 as their importance kind of fades from the zombie storyline going forward. And yes, Eisendrache is character focused and Dempsey gets the brunt of that focus, but the rest of Primus has a lot going on too, mostly in how none of them trust Richtofen yet. And honestly, why would they at this point? He withholds tons of information from them, he's always lying about the nature of their mission, he's just overall a very shifty guy at this point in the timeline. But really, there's one more thing with the story worth noting, which you probably already know, but I know I'm going to get comments about it if I don't mention it. Leroy from Buried is actually from Eisendrache. His actual name is Arthur, and you can spot him in the portrait where the Wolf King dies, since Arthur was a servant who helped the Wolf King build the castle. After the Wolf King dies, Arthur gets yanked through time by a temporal rift and he gets plopped down into Buried, where he'd later be found by and end up helping out the Victus crew. The story of Eisendrache is simple, but sometimes less is more, and I think this is definitely one such time. It reels things in and just focuses on telling a compelling story about one of its 4 leads, and this is a trend that a lot of future Zombies maps and just games will follow because it works really well. And Eisendrache is still, to this day, I think one of the finest examples of a story that Zombies has ever told. The atmosphere of Eisendrache is one of the most memorable, but also I think one of the most underrated aspects of the map. First, there's the elephant in the room. Griffin Castle is one of the most unique settings of any Zombies map ever. Until Citadel des Morts came out, this was the only Zombies map to be set in a castle, and I'm honestly surprised it took them so long to do a map set in a castle. A lot of the maps that came prior have settings that are way more out there than a castle, like Moon, Shangri-La, Buried, I could probably keep going on. And Griffin Castle is notably based on the real-life Hohenwerfen Castle in Austria, which was ordered to be built by Gebhard of Salzburg in the late 11th century. The castle has an extremely long history and has served many different purposes throughout the nearly 1,000 years it's been around. It's been a military stronghold, a prison, a hunting lodge. In World War II, it was a Nazi re-education camp, and nowadays it's a museum/historical site. Hohenwerfen Castle has appeared in a lot of iconic pieces of pop culture, mostly things centering around World War II though. For starters, it's seen in the background in some scenes of The Sound of Music, just because that's where they filmed parts of that movie. It's Adolf Hitler's home in the TV adaptation of The Man in the High Castle, and most relevant to Eisendrache, it serves as the main setting of Where Eagles Dare, the classic World War II movie starring Clint Eastwood. Where Eagles Dare is a really good movie, and when it comes to video games, it's very significant, since it's one of the big inspirations for the Wolfenstein series. Without Wolfenstein, we wouldn't have Doom. Without Doom, we likely wouldn't have had Call of Duty or Call of Duty Zombies. So in a way, we have this movie to thank for that. And I was honestly thinking about doing a whole section of the retrospective about Where Eagles Dare, but I decided to cut it because I just didn't think it would fit in very well with the rest of the video. But seriously, if you haven't seen it before and you like Clint Eastwood or World War II movies, I highly recommend it. Visiting the real-life Hohenwerfen Castle was even a bit of a rite of passage for Zombies YouTubers between 2016 and 2017 or so. Just like how visiting Alcatraz was back in 2013 and 2014 or so because of Mob of the Dead. You know, it's just really cool when a zombies map is based on a real place like this. It doesn't really happen as much as you would expect, and when it does, I think it's really awesome how it usually becomes something the community can rally around. And I know I didn't talk as much about the history of the castle as I did with, say, Alcatraz and the Mob of the Dead Blood of the Dead video, but that's just because Eisendrache technically isn't set in the real-life Hohenwerfen Castle. Griffin Castle is just heavily modeled after it. So the real history of Hohenwerfen Castle just isn't as relevant to Eisendrache as Alcatraz's history was to Mob of the Dead. Well, that, and Hohenwerfen has about 800 more years of history than Alcatraz does, so if I went in-depth talking about it, we'd be here literally all day. Plus, I'm really trying hard to keep these runtimes of these videos shorter than the Shadows of Evil video. I have a bit of a stretching videos out longer than they need to be problem I'm trying to rein in. Aside from Griffin Castle itself, the atmosphere is very significant because I think it's one of the main areas where Eisendrache really feels like a sequel to The Giant and also Origins, which is good because, you know, it is a sequel to those maps. Firstly, the map shares the same zombie models as The Giant, and I actually failed to mention it there in that video, but these zombies are taken from the campaign. They're supposed to be soldiers from the Battle of the Bulge. Maybe it's a bit lazy to reuse these same zombie models so much, but they fit pretty well into any snowy World War II setting, and that's really no different here. They fit well under Eisendrache. Color-wise, the map really feels like a sequel to The Giant. It has the same cold blue color palette as that map, especially in the exteriors. The interiors are lit with warmer colors, but it still feels cold since the castle's been turned into just another Group 935 base like 3’s, where horrible people have been allowed to perform their horrible experiments. The castle feels kind of gothic, a little Frankenstein, because it's just been filled with all sorts of equipment and electrical devices and consoles, and it's been turned into a lab, it's been turned into a facility, you know, it's had all life stripped out of it, ironically enough, because, you know, it's where they've been doing 935 stuff, reanimating the dead. The only real exception to this is the living quarters, where the Maxuses live, since you have Samantha's room, which is one of the only cozy spots on the map that feels kinda innocent almost. Toys are strewn around the map, and there are crude crayon drawings hung up on the walls. And I think it's especially cool that these crayon drawings are significant, because they have hints and clues and references to story stuff that's going on. You know, there's a drawing of a keeper, there's a drawing of her and Fluffy the dog, there's a drawing of her riding a dragon, you know, etc. And you really do get the feeling that this is a place where a child has lived and made a home for themselves. And I think it's nicely juxtaposed with how the next room over, Dr. Maxus's room, is just more lab stuff, more creepy, clinical, evil scientist goings on. I know Eisendrache is almost never mentioned in like any listings of the scariest zombies maps ever, but it really does have a bit of an unsettling vibe to it. But the map isn't all gloomy. There's tons of dragons and dragon imagery around the map. There's the obvious example in the form of the 3 dragons who feed to get the Wrath of the Ancients bow, but dragons also just appear very frequently on flags around the map and in the stained glass windows around the map. All the dragons really help to add to the kind of medieval vibe of the map, almost a little fantasy leaning, and it makes a lot of sense that there's all these dragons because that's what Eisendrache translates to in English, the Iron Dragon. And the Origins connections are subtle, but they do still go a long way to make the maps feel thematically connected. The most obvious connection, at least to me, is the Pack-a-Punch machine sharing the same model as the machine from Origins. Eisendrache is the only other map to use that Pack-a-Punch model, so this immediately makes a connection between the two maps. It's not the biggest thing in the world, but when paired with all the connections to Origins and the gameplay of the map, like the Panzer and the bows basically being the Stavs 2.0, it feels like a very intentional cherry on top to really harken back to Origins, you know, to really wink at the audience, let them know, yeah, we're doing Origins again, so what? There's also the destroyed giant robot outside the map that Primus used in the intro to get to Griffin Castle from the Giant. And sure, this is a connection to the Giant also, but 99% of people think of Origins first when they see these giant robots, and not the Giant. Then there's the fact it's a snowy map, which I personally see as another, probably unintentional, connection to Origins, which was another snowy map, of course. But that's obviously a lot more of a reach than like the giant robot and the Pack-a-Punch machine and the bows and all that. The music of Eisendrache is also really, really good in my opinion. It's a lot more somber and understated than something like Shadows of Evil, which was very jazzy and upbeat despite the dire circumstances of that map and what the characters are going through. Like I said, Eisendrache is much more somber, a lot slower, a lot quieter. There's a lot less music on Eisendrache than something like Shadows of Evil. There are, of course, the ambient tracks for some of the different areas on the map, and they're pretty good, but they tend to just kind of blend into the background, which you could argue is what an ambient track should do, but there isn't quite the number or the quality of ambient tracks as some of the Black Ops 2 maps, like Mob of the Dead and Origins. They had tons of ambient tracks, all of which were pretty memorable in my opinion. Eisendrache has a couple good ones, but a lot of them are just kinda whatever. You know, they set the mood well, kind of dreary, sad, dark, but nothing I'm gonna like listen to after the fact on my own. Of all the different ambient tracks on the map, I think that the best one is by far the one for the rocket launch pad, because it stands out a lot from the other ones. It's a lot more techy, it has kind of like a synthy, keyboardy vibe going on that the other tracks on the map just do not. I think by far, the Eisendrache's best music comes from the Easter egg. First up, there is the boss fight theme, called Legendary, or at least that's what it's called on YouTube. I don't know if there's like a different official title out there somewhere. I'm not sure. I don't think the Eisendrache soundtrack has been like posted in its entirety officially by Treyarch. It's pretty perfect boss fight music. It's very high energy, and it really does stand out more as music, firstly because it's a unique piece, it's not used anywhere else, at least not to my knowledge, than like the boss fight theme on Shadows of Evil, which was just reused from the campaign. So yeah, I think it is a very, very well made piece. I really think that the best piece of soundtrack that Eisendrache has is the track titled The Moon's Destruction, or at least again, that's what it's called on YouTube. I don't know if there's a different name for it out there. This is the piano piece that plays at the end of the Easter egg as you send the rockets to the moon to kill Dr. Groff, and he gives his big final speech right before he dies. And it just gives the moment so much more weight that it would not have otherwise. I'm just gonna let it play in full, because it's like 40 seconds.
Protocol initiated. 30 seconds to impact. You're reading multiple rocket launches. What have you done? You are a fool, Beethoven! Even the destruction of this facility and my own death will not prevent the advancement of our cause. You'll stop nothing!
It is as I foresaw. Two deaths, but only one remains.
And then there's also My Brother's Keeper, which is the song that plays during the ending cutscene. And again, it's not very loud or overstated because the cutscene really does focus more on the characters and Dempsey and Richtofen. But it's just there enough, and it really does fit the emotions of the theme very well, and again, helps that scene really hit home.
I should never have trusted you, Richtofen! Never!
You should trust me, Dempsey. You all should. This artifact has the power to contain and preserve the subject's soul. Your soul. But it can only be done after the moment of death, just as you saw me do to my other self. It is the only way.
Wait!
So while I don't think that the soundtrack of Eisendrache is as memorable as a lot of other maps, like, you know, say Shadows of Evil or Mob of the Dead, it still does its job. The different songs that played the different parts of the map and different points of the main quest, they, enhance the emotions of the experience, and they help all these big moments hit home. So I would say, yeah, it is a very good soundtrack. And that's honestly about all I have to say about Eisendrache's atmosphere. Not to say that it's bad at all, far from it. I think that just aside from being set in a castle, it has a lot more normal of an atmosphere for a zombies map. Plus, the map is a lot more homogeneous than something like Shadows of Evil. It's just a different approach to map design. Shadows of Evil has 5 different sections that all have slightly different vibes. Eisendrache just commits more to a single feel throughout the entire map, save for the Undercroft, which is a lot more fantastical feeling than the rest of the castle due to the bows being kept down there, and the low gravity. But aside from the Undercroft, the rest of the castle has a very cohesive atmosphere. And I think that's just the best way to put it. Eisendrache has one of the most cohesive atmospheres in the mode's history. It's by no means experimental or new. Aside from being set in a castle, Eisendrache is the Black Ops 3 map that plays it the most safe with its atmosphere. Aside from the Giant, of course. But that's fine. Eisendrache is trying to recapture the feel of a classic World at War early Black Ops 1 zombies map. And honestly, I think it knocks it out of the park. Eisendrache, like most other zombies maps, is filled with Easter eggs and secrets to find. The largest is My Brother's Keeper, which is the map's main quest. To do the quest, the main prerequisite is that you need as many upgraded bows as you have people in your game. So if you're playing solo, you need 1 bow, 2 players, you need 2 bows, etc. And you also need the Ragnaroks. If you aren't the most familiar with the map, then it's usually a good idea to just get all that done before starting the quest, since once it starts, it's pretty much non-stop until the ending. And it can be really easy to just end up wasting time and burning rounds waiting around for something to get built. When you're ready to begin, go to the teleporter in the Undercroft and shoot all the orbs around the top of the teleporter with the Wrath of the Ancients. The orbs will start glowing gold, and once all of them are hit, you'll hear a Margwa's growling sound effect, and the Wisp step will begin. This step spawns in a blue wisp of electricity around the map in one of 8 places, and you need to find the wisp and shoot it with a bow. The wisp will then reappear in a different place where you'll need to shoot it again. This repeats several more times until you hear a different sound effect that tells you that you've completed the step. Now you can return to the teleporter and there will be a purple haze coming from the floor of the teleporter. Using the teleporter while it's purple will let you travel back in time. This will send you back to Groff's lab, but in the past, and the screen will be super desaturated to let you know you're in the past, because they didn't have color in the past. You need to grab this glowing soul canister in the left corner of the room, and then grab these fuses off this crate in the right corner, and on top of all that, you need to see the passcode that Dr. Groff uses to lock his safe, which is randomized every game. When you return to the present, you'll be attacked by a Panzer, but then you can move on to the next step. Go to the death ray and use it if you haven't already. You can put the fuses that you just got from the past into one side of the death ray, and then flip the switch on the other side from destroy to protect. Now the computers by the clock tower will be turned on, and you can enter the combination to the safe into the computer, which will unlock the safe down by the teleporter. Go back down to the safe and grab the keycard and the death ray parts from the safe. Then go back to the death ray and put the extra parts you got into the death ray. One goes into each of the electrical death tower thingies, and then switch it back to destroy once the extra parts are in. Go back to the clock tower computers and interact with them, and this will begin a game of Simon Says and will spawn in infinite hellhounds. Once you win, you'll hear a sound effect, and one of the death ray Tesla balls will have a white electrical aura around it. Now go to the rocket test site and play a game of Simon Says at the computers down there to charge up the other Tesla ball thing. Then press the green button on the back of the death ray to shoot Dempsey's rocket out of orbit, making it crash into the upper courtyard right in front of the church. At the side of the rocket on the floor will be the stiff golden rod, which you need to pick up. Now you need to do the Wisp step again to travel back in time again. When in the past, you need to run to the right and put the keycard from the safe into this computer. This will open up a crate that contains a stone slab with the Keeper symbol carved into it, and you need to grab this stone slab. Then go to the crypt where you get the Wrath of the Ancients from and put the stiff golden rod into the slot on the front of the sarcophagus. This will spawn in the Ghost Keeper. You need to follow around and charge up with the different upgraded bows at the 4 different spots around the map. When he gets to one of the spots where you charge him up, a white ring will appear on the ground, and when you stand inside the white ring, a colored border will appear around the screen to tell you what bow you need to get kills with. This is the step where having bows upgraded is a necessity, so if you don't have them finished yet, then you're gonna hit a roadblock here. And this is where you need the stone slab as well, since at the circle in front of the main gate, by double tap, you need to put the stone into the wall to get it to actually start collecting souls. Once he's fully charged, he'll turn into a normal, physical keeper. Follow him back to the Undercroft and he'll summon in the MPD from Moon, which you need to place a soul canister from earlier into the corner of. This will open up the MPD with the Keeper inside of it, who is now corrupted by the MPD and the Dark Aether's power, the exact same way that Richtofen and Samantha were in the original timeline. Now, everyone in your game needs to plant their Ragnaroks down onto the glowing pressure plates on the ground surrounding the MPD. And it's time for the boss fight, the first of its kind in Call of Duty Zombies, against the corrupted Keeper. The fight takes place in a separate arena. It's this dark room with stone pillars around the middle, and then there's the corrupted Keeper, who's now giant, just floating in the middle. Skeletons replace the zombies and will spawn in endlessly to attack you during the fight. The Keeper has 4 different attacks he can use, each corresponding to a different bow. He can make mini volcanoes rise up out of the ground to hurt you like the lava bow, he can spawn hellhounds like the wolf bow, or he can spawn giant exploding Keeper heads like the void bow. These are the 3 main attacks he uses for most of the boss fight when he's just flying around the arena. His final attack he'll only use when he's in the middle of the arena, and it's a charged up lightning blast, which is kind of like the storm bow. It takes the Keeper a good 10 seconds or so to charge up the attack, but when he uses it, it will one-shot you, even with Juggernog, if you aren't taking cover behind one of the stone pillars around the arena. To damage the Keeper, you need to wait for him to start charging up his big one-shot lightning attack. Have someone place their Ragnaroks into the white lightning wisp that spawns in the middle of the arena while he's charging the attack, and then when the Keeper lowers onto the Ragnaroks, the attack will be cancelled and the Keeper will be stunned, revealing his weak spot, the giant glowing yellow Keeper symbol on his chest. Then you just lay into the weak spot with everything you have. If you deal enough damage, the Keeper will disappear and you'll get a max ammo. Panzers will then spawn in to swarm you and you need to kill them as well. You'll get another max ammo after the Panzers are dead, and then the Keeper will reappear, meaning you have finished a phase of the boss fight. Now you just repeat this 2 or 3 more times and then the Keeper will be defeated. He doesn't get any new moves or anything like that as the fight progresses. The main thing that changes is just that there will be more Panzers as the phases progress. Once you kill the Keeper, you'll be sent back to the Undercrop. Use the summoning key on the MPD and then go use the summoning key again on the computers next to the clock tower. This will fire a volley of rockets towards the moon, blowing it up and destroying Griffin Station, as well as killing Dr. Groff and all the Group 935 remnants residing there. As far as the Deceptio Fracture goes, this is the end of Group 935. Then you see the cutscene where Primus Dempsey pulls the plug on Ultimus Dempsey's cryopod and Richtofen collects his soul. And as a reward for doing the quest, you'll receive a Perkaholic, albeit not a permanent one. You will lose these perks if you go down, unlike some other Easter eggs. This is one of the best Zombies Easter egg quests ever. And one of the main reasons why is that there's basically no RNG outside of like the Wisp step. In Zombies Easter eggs, there's good RNG and there's bad RNG. Good RNG is something like the Wisp step. It's different enough from playthrough to playthrough since the actual spots the Wisps are in are different, and it adds some replay value, but it's not an annoying step that relies so heavily on luck. Bad RNG ruins a ton of Zombies Easter eggs. The biggest and most infamous example is Moon. You need a ton of RNG to go in your favor to get that Easter egg done in any reasonable amount of time. Between all the wonder weapons you need out of the mystery box, as well as getting the excavator to decompress Tunnel 6. That can take forever if you're getting unlucky with it. But plenty of other maps' quests have a step or two that suffer from bad RNG. An example is waiting for the robots on Origins so you can put the stabs in their heads. The absence of any and all steps like that on Der Eisendrache is the absence of any steps that are outside of the player's control, and it's really what makes Der Eisendrache's Easter eggs so good. The player is in control all the time. That's also why it's easily one of my favorite Easter eggs to replay with my friends, since when you know what you're doing, it's really easy to get into a fun groove with it. So basically, it's like the complete opposite of whenever we try and do the Moon Easter egg, because we can just never get into a groove because we're always just waiting on something to happen, whether it would be getting the wave gun or the excavator. I could go on about Moon, but I'm not gonna. There's also no time-wasting part of the Easter egg, like, for example, doing all of the challenges in Gorod Krovi or Blood of the Dead's Easter eggs. You know, a part of the egg that feels like it's just been added in to waste time during the initial Easter egg hunt, and also just pad out the length of the quest, while not feeling all that important to the rest of the quest. The boss fight against the Corrupted Keeper is also really good, and is a great way to end the quest. It's an improvement in every single way over the Shadow Man fight from Shadows of Evil, because the Keeper is an actually imposing boss who actually does more to attack you than just floating inside of a bubble while zombies and Margwas swarm you. And the fight is a really decent challenge. I mean, me and my friends still end up getting caught off guard by it sometimes, and we'll die at the boss fight. But it feels very fair in its difficulty. It doesn't feel cheap. And I think it's worth mentioning that this is one of the best Easter eggs in terms of speedrunning as well. I'm not a speedrunner myself, but I really respect the amount of dedication it takes to get good at it, and Der Eisendrache is one of the best zombies maps for speedrunning. The quest is just so tightly designed and well paced. It really is all killer and no filler, which is why it's become so revered in the decades since it released. But the Eisendrache is packed with other Easter eggs too. First up are the musical Easter eggs, and there are 3 of them. The first is Dead Again, the main theme of the map, the Kevin Sherwood and Elena Siegman song for the map. You activate it by interacting with 3 teddy bears around the map. One is in Samantha's room, another is in the Undercroft next to Juggernog in the little jail cell room, and the third is inside of the cab of a truck down at the rocket test site. This is one of my favorite Zombies Easter egg songs. It has one of the best guitar riffs in the series, Elena Siegman singing is just top notch. Honestly, I love everything about it except for the main chorus. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I just think that the chorus is the worst part of Dead Again. I think it just sounds a bit too melodic compared to the rest of the song. I would have preferred if the whole thing was more like the verses, especially the second half of the verses. I'll just play the snippet for you instead of singing it for you. Not that the chorus is bad, it just knocks the song down from like a 10 out of 10 for me to like an 8.5 out of 10 for me, because everything else about the song is just on another level, in my opinion. There's also a Samantha's Lullaby Easter egg that can be activated by interacting with the music box inside of Sam's room. A super simple one, and honestly, one that I always forget exists. But this is the start of a running Easter egg that goes all the way through the Zombies Chronicles maps, where every single map has its own remixed version of Samantha's Lullaby. And I think that's pretty cool. And lastly is the classical music Easter egg, which is a portion of Anton Reicha's Requiem called Dies Irae. You activate this one by interacting with the 3 gramophones found around the map. There's one in Sam's room, one is in the church, and the last one is in the Undercroft next to the pyramid. I really don't have a lot to comment on for this one since I'm just not really much of a classical music guy. It does sound really good, it's very fast paced and feels very grand, which I think fits the map. But much like the Samantha's Lullaby Easter egg, I just never find myself doing this one. And honestly, I don't even know how many people know about this Easter egg since it never gets talked about online. You can turn the church into a disco room. Above all the control consoles and whatnot is a giant model of the Earth with a little moon and a little rocket orbiting around it. If you hit the moon with a ray gun or other explosive while the moon and the rocket are lined up, a funky track will begin playing in the church and the globe will basically turn into a mirror ball, reflecting light all over the walls of the room. This is a really fun and easy one to do and can be repeated as much as you want throughout the course of a game. So if you ever find yourself getting bored and want some music, you can just go down to the church and boogie down. You can get a free death machine down in the Undercroft by wall running over this specific blue pressure plate back by the Pack-a-Punch location. The death machine will be floating on the opposite end of the room over the buildable table. Also down in the Undercroft, you can unlock a secret BRM wall by running over all 6 of the pressure plates in the Undercroft. And once you do, the BRM will be in the back near the buildable table, up on the wall of those, so you need to be wall running to buy it. Or at least high jumping and low gravity. You can get a secret Panzer helmet on the map that, just like the Marwa helmet on Shadows, gives you extra protection against Panzer attacks. There are 3 Panzer claws hidden in the ceilings of 3 different parts of the map. One is in the tunnel right through the door next to Quick Revive, one is in the rafters above the walkway of the lower courtyard, near the first dragon, and the third is in the armor hall of the castle near the dead-end spawn window. If you shoot the claw, it'll fall down onto a crate at each location. Shoot it again and the thruster on the claw will activate, sending the claw flying straight forward in a line. If you hit a panzer with the flying claw, it will insta-kill them. And you need to kill 3 panzers total, 1 with each claw, to get the helmet. But you need to be perfect since if you miss a shot with the claw, it disappears for the rest of the game and you lock yourself out of getting the panzer helmet. Much like the Marwa helmet, this is a really useful thing to have, but I just don't know if it's worth all the effort. On the bright side, it is a lot easier to get than the Marwa helmet. This takes a lot less time. At the very least, I really like how Treyarch concluded this quest involving the Panzer Soldat Claw, since outside of Origins and Zombies Chronicles, the Black Ops 3 Panzers are obviously lacking the claw. Plus, the claw attack is arguably the most infamous attack that any incarnation of the Panzer has used in any Zombies game. Really, if you ask any Zombies player who's been around long enough to describe a Panzer, the claw is probably the first thing that they'll mention. So I think it's fun that there's this quest that kind of pays homage to the much hated aspect of the OG Panzer Soldat. There is a secret toilet plunger melee weapon that you can get. To get it, you need the Wrath of the Ancient Bow and the Ragnaroks. Go inside of the clock tower and shoot out the walls to start the Magma Bow upgrade, which will reveal the gears and cogs of the clock for the clock tower. Place your Ragnaroks down and those will lift up the gears into place, fixing the clock. You can flip a switch on a computer on the lower level of the clock tower to stop and start the clock. You need to stop the clock exactly at 9:35, and if you do, the bell will ring and lightning will strike the tower. Then you can go down into the undercroft. If you did the clock step correctly, then the blue wisp will be floating above the pyramid even when zero gravity isn't active. And then during zero gravity, wall run up against this circle on the wall, and eventually you'll get sent back in time into Groff's lab. On a table right next to the teleporter will be the toilet plunger for you to grab. Most of the time, the toilet plunger is a pretty whatever melee weapon. It's kind of just a gimmicky novelty weapon. But whenever you kill a Panzer, for the next 60 seconds, the plunger will be on fire and will kill any enemy, including other Panzers, in a single hit. This is super useful for the boss fight, although getting the timing down for the clock tower step in solo can be very annoying, so I never end up doing this outside of co-op. You can call in the second gondola with your tram fuses, which will provide you with a much better reward. All you have to do is throw your grenades into the gondola as it leaves at the start of the game, and then your fifth tram fuse will call up the second gondola, which will typically have a pack-a-punch gun, but sometimes it can even have monkey bombs or the ray gun. And honestly, there isn't any reason not to do this one every time you play Eisendrache. There is a hidden heart Easter egg on Eisendrache that is put there by Treyarch developer Drew Marlowe, and it's a picture of him and his wife and son inside of a heart that you can get to pop up. The process to get this to appear is very complicated, and you need to do a ton of different stuff in the correct order on round 1, like building barriers in the right order and buying the weapons in the right order. Very complicated stuff, but if you do it correctly, you will get to see the heart right outside the spawn room, like the door to the gatehouse. You open that one, the heart will be out there. And again, it's got this family photo of this Treyarch dev inside of it. And this took forever to solve legitimately. This was, I think, the last Easter egg that people really cracked on Eisendrache. And it is just a really nice, kind of heartwarming Easter egg. Like Shadows of Evil, you can get a free Mega Gobblegum on Eisendrache, and it's very simple. Go down to Groff's lab, and on the right side of the room, you will see a potted plant, but the plant is just a seedling. Grab the plant, and then go back in time to the past version of the lab, either by doing the main quest or by doing the plunger Easter egg. When you're in the past, you can place the potted plant back down, and when you go back to the present, the plant will be fully grown. Interact with it, and you'll grab a free random Mega Gobblegum. This is just one that I try and do pretty much every single game. Yeah, it's a bit more complicated than the Shadows of Evil free Gobblegum Easter egg, but it's still pretty easy to pull off. If you know how to do the Easter egg, then you can run through the Wisp steps super quickly in solo, meaning that this potted plant free Gobblegum Easter egg is, in turn, very easy to do. And sadly, this will be the last free Gobblegum Easter egg in Black Ops 3. Unless I'm forgetting one, but I am pretty positive that the other maps did not continue this trend, which sucks. I really feel like this should have been a type of Easter egg that every single map had. It would have been a great way to get players to get to try out whatever the new Gobblegums were for a given DLC. But a man can dream.
A man can dream.
And I've saved my personal favorite side Easter egg for last. You can turn all the zombies on the map into skeletons. First, you need to get the Wrath of the Ancient's bow, and then shoot 3 floating invisible skulls around the map. One is near Mule Kick in the tunnel, another is next to Double Tap near the gate, and the last one is in front of the church, floating in front of the stained glass windows out front. The skulls are invisible by default, but if you use the in plain sight Gobblegum, then they will become visible. But you can shoot them without the Gobblegum if you get lucky with your timing. And then all new zombies that spawn in for the rest of your game will be skeletons like the ones from the boss fight. I love this Easter egg. It's just a cosmetic change, but it's one of those things that so easily could have just not been added to the map. Changing the zombies to skeletons really does go a long way to change the vibe of the map, and it really does end up feeling a lot like a Wolfenstein game, what with the Nazi castle and reanimated skeletons running around. This is an Easter egg that I like to do pretty much whenever I play Eisendrache. And that is all the Easter eggs on Eisendrache, I think. All the ones that are noteworthy, at least. Needless to say, Eisendrache is a gold standard for Easter eggs in zombies. Its main quest is top-notch and easily one of the best that the mode has ever seen, but most of the side Easter eggs are really useful too. Even the ones that aren't really beneficial to the player are just downright fun. It really helps the replay value of the map to just have so many different things that you can do while you're playing. The only really bad thing about Eisendrache's Easter eggs, and particularly its main quest, is that it's a high point that Black Ops 3 would struggle to reach in its future outings. Eisendrache is exactly what the zombies community needed after Shadows of Evil alienated so many people during Black Ops 3's launch window. It's much less experimental than Shadows of Evil, but because of that it has a lot more mass appeal than Shadows of Evil as well. All of the map's similarities to Origins, like the Primus crew, the bows, and a similar aesthetic, just as a few examples, made it a very welcoming experience for zombies fans at the time. and that helped the map to really leave its mark on the community. Plus, storytelling-wise, this is where Black Ops 3 and really COD Zombies as a whole started to spread its wings and get people invested in the more intimate and character-driven story of the Primus crew and their quest to create a better tomorrow. The release of 3’s is when Black Ops 3 started to be seen in a more positive light by the community as well, and I'd go so far as to say that it's what started the golden age of the COD Zombies community that would continue from, say, like early 2016 up through like the release of Black Ops 4 in fall of 2018. This was the start of the good times. 3’s has become one of the most beloved Zombies maps ever released in the decade since it launched, and there isn't really anything new I can say about it that hasn't been said before because it really is just that good. But that is the biggest problem with 3’s. Really, it was the biggest problem. It's so good that whatever map Treyarch would put out next would be held to an insane level of scrutiny, and anything that fell short of 3’s levels of quality would be seen as a huge disappointment. And obviously, with hindsight, we know that's exactly what happened. But that is a story for next time. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to show your support. It really means a ton. These videos take a long time to make, and I really appreciate the positive feedback. Peace out and God bless. I'll catch you next time.
Yeah, cause I got it like that. Flow so smooth like I got it on tap. Yeah, and I'ma say it be a good night while I'm on my Yingling, while I'm drinking Bud Light. Can you get it when you miss